The topic of today's lecture is History of English Literature. We shall discuss the different ages, major writers, and their prominent works over the course of centuries.
The history of English literature is a rich tapestry spanning over a millennium, deeply intertwined with the political, social, and cultural evolution of the English-speaking world. It is generally divided into distinct historical eras or ages, each defined by unique literary styles, philosophical movements, and major historical shifts. 1. The Old English, Anglo-Saxon period, 450–1066. This period begins with the invasion of Celtic England by Germanic tribes, Angles, Saxons, Jutes. Literature during this era was largely oral and written in Old English. Poetry was heroic, elegiac, and deeply communal, often blending pagan heroic odes with newly introduced Christian beliefs. Major characteristics: oral tradition, alliterative verse, caesura, pauses in poetry, themes of fate, loyalty to the king, and Christian versus pagan ideals. Major works and writers: Beowulf, Anonymous, the oldest surviving epic poem in Old English, detailing the heroic exploits of the warrior Beowulf against the monster Grendel, Grendel's mother, and a dragon. The Wanderer the Seafarer, anonymous elegiac poems reflecting on isolation, exile, and the transience of earthly life. Caedmon, known as the earliest English poet, famous for Caedmon's Hymn, a short theological poem. 2. The Middle English period, 1066 to 1500. Triggered by the Norman conquest of 1066, French became the language of the court and nobility, while Old English evolved into Middle English, absorbing thousands of French words. This period saw the rise of courtly romance, religious plays, mystery and miracle plays, and secular poetry. Major characteristics: transition from alliterative verse to rhymed stanzas, the rise of chivalric romance, social satire, and humanism. Major writers and works: Geoffrey Chaucer, often called the father of English literature. His masterpiece, The Canterbury Tales, is a brilliant frame narrative that provides a satirical portrait of 14th century English society. The Pearl Poet, Anonymous, wrote Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, a masterful Arthurian chivalric romance focusing on honor and temptation. Thomas Maylay compiled and wrote Les Morts d'Arthur, the definitive prose collection of King Arthur legends. 3. The Renaissance early modern period, 1500 to 1660. Influenced by the European Renaissance, this era was a golden age for English culture, science, and especially drama. It is subdivided into smaller eras named after monarchs or political eras. Elizabethan age, 1558 to 1603, the height of drama and poetry. Jacobean age, 1603 to 1625, literature became more sophisticated, dark, and analytical. Caroline age, 1625 to 1649, and Commonwealth period Puritan interregnum, 1649 to 1660, marked by political upheaval, civil war, and the closure of public theatres under Puritan rule. Major writers and works: William Shakespeare, the preeminent dramatist and poet in Western history. His massive body of work includes tragedies like Hamlet, Macbeth, Othello, and King Lear, comedies like A Midsummer Night's Dream, and a collection of 154 sonnets. Christopher Marlowe, a pioneer of Elizabethan tragedy who mastered blank verse, famous for Dr. Faustus. John Milton, a monumental Puritan poet who wrote the epic blank verse poem Paradise Lost, detailing the fall of man and Satan's rebellion. John Donne, the leading figure of the metaphysical poets, known for highly intellectualized poetry, intense conceits, and works like Holy Sonnets and The Flea. 4. The Neoclassical period, 1660 to 1798, inspired by classical Greece and Rome. This period emphasized reason, order, logic, and restraint, acting as a direct reaction against the emotionalism of the Renaissance. It coincided with the Enlightenment, Restoration Age, 1660 to 1700 realism, satire, and the reopening of theatres, Restoration comedies. Augustan Age, 1700 to 1745 marked by razor-sharp political and social satire. Age of Sensibility Age of Johnson, 1745 to 1798 emphasized instinct and feeling rather than pure restraint, paving the way for Romanticism. Major writers and works. John Dryden, a dominant literary force of the Restoration, known for satirical poems like Absalom and Achitophel. Alexander Pope, master of the heroic couplet and brilliant satirist, famous for the mock epic The Rape of the Lock. Jonathan Swift, a master prose satirist who wrote Gulliver's Travels and A Modest Proposal. Henry Fielding, a pioneer of the English novel, known for his picaresque comic masterpiece Tom Jones and earlier foundational works like Joseph Andrews. 5. The Romantic Period, 1798 to 1837. The publication of William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge's lyrical ballads in 1798 marks the traditional start of Romanticism. It was a massive revolt against neoclassical reason and the Industrial Revolution. Major characteristics: focus on nature, individualism, intense human emotion, imagination, melancholy, and the sublime. Major writers and works. William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge co-authored lyrical ballads, which included Coleridge's The Rime of the Ancient Mariner and Wordsworth's lines, composed a few miles above Tintern Abbey. The younger romantics. John Keats, Ode to a Nightingale. Percy Bysshe Shelley, Ode to the West Wind, and Lord Byron, Don Juan. Jane Austen bridged the gap between neoclassicism and Romanticism, writing biting social critiques and timeless novels such as Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility. Mary Shelley pioneered early science fiction and Gothic horror with Frankenstein. 6. The Victorian Period, 1837 to 1901, named after the reign of Queen Victoria. This period was marked by the height of the British Empire, rapid industrialization, scientific advancement, like Darwin's theory of evolution, and a growing anxiety regarding morality, class, and religion. The novel became the dominant literary format. Major characteristics: moral earnestness, social anxiety, class struggles, the plight of the poor, and the conflict between science and faith. Major writers and works. Charles Dickens, the ultimate chronicler of Victorian London, famous for classics addressing institutional cruelty, like Great Expectations, David Copperfield, and Oliver Twist. The Bronte sisters, Charlotte Bronte, Jane Eyre, and Emily Bronte, Wuthering Heights, both creating powerful, passionate, and atmospheric Gothic-influenced fiction. George Eliot, Mary and Evans, known for her psychological realism and intricate character studies in masterworks like Middlemarch. Thomas Hardy captured the tragic decline of rural life against industrialization in Tess of the D'Urbervilles and Jude the Obscure. Alfred, Lord Tennyson, the quintessential Victorian poet, renowned for In Memoriam AHH, and The Charge of the Light Brigade. 7. The Modern Period, 1901 to 1945, shattered by the devastation of World War I, the rise of industrial technology, and globalization. Modernist writers rejected traditional Victorian forms of writing. They believed old structures could no longer accurately reflect a broken world. Major characteristics: stream of consciousness, fragmentation, nonlinear timelines, alienation, disillusionment, and psychological interiority. Major writers and works. Virginia Woolf, a pioneer of the stream of consciousness technique, famous for To the Lighthouse and Mrs. Dalloway. James Joyce, the Irish titan of modernism, whose revolutionary novels Ulysses and A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man reshaped prose fiction. T.S. Eliot redefined 20th century poetry with his modernist masterpiece The Waste Land, capturing the spiritual and cultural void of post-war Europe. George Orwell wrote powerful political allegories and dystopian novels near the end of this era. most notably Animal Farm and 1984. 8. The postmodern and contemporary period, 1945 present. Beginning after World War II, postmodernism took modernist fragmentation to an extreme, celebrating chaos, ironies, and the breakdown of absolute truths. In more recent decades, contemporary literature has shifted heavily toward postcolonialism, multiculturalism, identity, and digital age dynamics. Major characteristics: metafiction, stories about storytelling, unreliable narrators, pastiche, dark humor, magical realism, and diverse global perspectives. Major writers and works: Samuel Beckett, a giant of the theater of the absurd, famous for his minimalist, existential play Waiting for Godot. Kazuo Ishiguro, Nobel Prize-winning author known for his poignant, elegant prose in novels like The Remains of the Day and Never Let Me Go. Margaret Atwood, celebrated for her speculative fiction and feminist themes.